Hello, Optics users. We're going to use Optics Plot and Grid to help us assess race 8 on Friday at Belmont. It's the True North. It's grade 2. It's part of the great Stakes Festival of Belmont, also the start of the late pick 4 on Friday. And we always start looking at the favorite. If we can beat the favorite, we're going to bolster our prices vertically and also horizontally. So the favorite in this race is number 8, Whitmore. He's the morning line 2-1 favorite, but we expect him to go much lower than that 2-1. We'd be surprised if he's not, around the 6-5 range by post time. So first thing we want to do is kind of just look at quad stat, just to get an idea if there's a particular profile at 6 furlongs dirt that has an advantage from a plot perspective. I've kind of pulled it up in a separate tab. I'm putting it alongside. And you can see quadrant 1 square. If you hover over that one, it seems to have a win percentage of 25.2 with a good healthy sample size of 393. And that just tells us that looks like quadrant 1 squares are dominant. Unfortunately, we don't have a quadrant 1 square in this case. It looks like we have a quadrant 2 square in the favorite, Whitmore, and let's just look over at that. He's got a 16.8 win percentage in that space. No advantage at all over quadrant 1 circles, which are winning at 17%. If you look at quadrant 4 squares, another one that we have in the 3, 4, 5, they win about a 12%. So there's really no big advantage. I would say it's kind of neutral on plot metrics. I wouldn't give the advantage to any particular one. If anything, maybe the quadrant 1 circles and quadrant 2 square, but really minimal advantage in that case. So no advantage in terms of plot metrics. Let's look at Whitmore and let's tell you why we don't particularly care for him. If you look at the grid, you can isolate on any particular horse, and we're isolating on Whitmore here. You can see this horse since the Kentucky Derby where he ran poorly. They gave him some time, brought him back, and they figured this horse was a sprinter, and they were right. Boy, I tell you, they've done a great job with this horse. He's won 5 consecutive races, all pretty much all with numbers in the mid to high 100s an optics standpoint, and he's just been terrific. The one concern, and even the grades are B plus, which are excellent. The one concern is the red you see in terms of the keywords. He's had a perfect. He's gotten flow in 2 races, and then his last race he got a hard. And what hard means is that visually, the horse had to really work. And if we pull up his extended comment, it says he was floated back after being up early, was ridden most of the way, was wide around the turn, and made good sustained rally to run down speeds. But he had to work for this win. So he really had to kind of put in maximum effort in that race. It was kind of an off track, could have been even a tiring track, and a little concerned that he may regress, with off of that race. And you see our hards are red because that's one keyword that we do see regression. All the reds we see regression generally in speed figures off those types of races. Green we usually see improvement, and in this case he's coming back 20 days. Off of that race. That's a concern. He's come back 21 days off layoffs of 21 days and 15 days previously. You could see he didn't run well, but I don't know if that's a fair. He ran 72 speed figure in the mud in Delta, and probably not an apples to apple comparison. And then the bad race in the Derby. They're not apples to apples comparison, but another data point that says this horse did regress off of a short layoff. Now we have the fact that he's run hard off a layoff. A lot of his figures have come at the benefit of good trips, so he might be a little bit vulnerable in here, and we're going to take our shot against him. Let's take a look at the field. Let's assess the early pace of the race. If you can see that there's about 5 horses where their running style is early pressers. Early, they like to either be in the front or pressing. As the 1, 2, 3, 6, and 9. And you can see that I would say right off the bat, just look at the plot, the 9 and the 3 look vulnerable. Now, if you look at the 3, he kind of looks like a square and he could close. I think he's more apt to want to be up closer. He's a little tricky to assess, but we just think that, if you look at the number 3, let's go back here, you can see that the races that he's kind of usually been good at is when he's kind of close up. You can just see his running lines here. Then he was slow out of the gate in the, in his last race of the year in the Breeders' Cup. Maybe you can excuse that. But then he comes out in this Belmont race where, you had some other horses, and he was slow out of the gate there. He got the flow just to kind of clunk up for second. We don't see him as a closer, though. And so he's going to be up forwardly placed. And I don't like the fact that in the last couple of races he hasn't shown any speed. Maybe it was the layoff, maybe it was the Breeders' Cup. Maybe you can make some excuses there. That's fine. I just think that he might be a little bit vulnerable here just because there's other speed in here, and I think that's really the way he likes to run. So we're gonna downgrade the number 3, no holding back bear. The number 9, this is a horse that wants to be up close. He's going to be compromised by the 1, 2, and the 6 who are faster. So we're going to pass on him. Let's look at the other 3 speeds, the 1, the 2, and the 6. The 1, Chief Lion, and the 2 and the 6, Green Grotto, win the same race. The Diablo, they duel, they hurt each other's chances. In the case of Chief Lion, is a 7-year-old with declining optics figs and optics grades. We're going to take a pass on him. Green Grotto, he'll surprise you now and then, but he needs his trip. Or you can see all these times where he kind of like ran his race, either was alone on the lead or he had a bias in his favor. If that doesn't show up, today, and it doesn't look that way. It doesn't look the race sets up from him from being alone perspective. From a bias perspective, you can't anticipate that. But just looking at the pace scenario, it look like he's again going to be compromised and not get the trip that he usually needs to win the races. So that kind of leaves us with the number 2. So let's look at the number 2, Holy Boss, who we think is a real quality horse sprinter. If you go back to his races at Belmont, the True North last year, he ran well. We thought he needed blinkers. He did get blinkers after that. But this is a horse that's run well in the King's Bishop as a 3-year-old. He has quality as a sprinter. Maybe he's rounding into form. Maybe he didn't like the track so much. He did get into traffic last time in the Maryland race, and even though he lost to Whitmore in his last 2 races, there's some excuses. He was against the flow or traffic. We think he's a quality sprinter. He's a big price. He gets Velasquez, who was on him last year during this time of the year. He got good, and maybe he can get good again at this time of the year. You can see that maybe he's a summer horse, not a winter horse. I don't know, but we just think at a price like this, he's got more upside than the other speeds in the race, and out of the other speeds, we like him the best to do that. So the number 2, Holy Boss, is a contender for us. Let's look at the off the pace horses. If we're going to think the Whitmore is vulnerable, we want to look at the 4, 5, and the 7 in this case. The 7 is Roy H., who struggled on the dirt to kind of clear optional 40. He even lost at Los Al, which is a lower tier track. He seems to be more of a grass horse. We respect Peter Miller, but this is a tough sell. Against these horses at this level on the dirt sprinting. We just think that he's vulnerable, especially if you look at his surface and distance filter. It's a circle in quadrant 4. So we're going to take a stand against him as a contender, and then we're going to look at the number 4, the stall walking dude. He is a dude, 7-year-old, and when he gets his flow, when he gets his trip, he's there. He doesn't always win, but he's a good horse to use in the exotics as he hits the board consistently. The value is not going to be there from a win perspective, but again, underneath, especially if he's clunking up there, you might be the horse that you're going to have to use in your exacta and your tries and whatever exotic vertical bets you make. So stall walking dude. And the number 5 is the other horse that intrigues us, another price horse. He's 8-1 in the morning line, and that's Fellowship. He ran in the Pimlico Special, made a move, and then kind of really flattened out. It could have been even a prep for today's race. The race before was against only optional claimers, but he's only a 4-year-old, so there's more upside in this horse. He looks like he's got some potential too. He ran very well in that race. Even though he was running against less, he proved that he can really close at a sprint distance. Prior to that, they had this horse that they thought a lot of him on the Kentucky Derby Trail. He ran well enough. He finished 3rd in the Holy Bull, the Fountain of Youth in the Florida Derby. So, this horse has some quality. We always thought that we would want shorter, as you see our keyword here in the Florida Derby. So this horse has some quality, maybe under the radar, and maybe sprinting is what he wants. And if things get a little bit hot up front, especially with some of Green Grotto and some of the others, this guy can come running late and at a decent price. We kind of like him to be another horse that we're going to use in our pick fours and also some of our vertical wagers. So in conclusion, it looks like we like the 2, which is the best of the early pace, in the 5, who we think has some more upside. 4 is a consistent board hitter. And we're going to play against the number 8, Whitmore, just thinking that he's going to regress off the consistently good efforts and good trips that he's gotten recently. So that's the True North for Friday. Good luck to everyone.